Welcome everybody to the latest episode.
Hello,
Um,
everyone.
it is January something, 23rd, so this will be coming out on the 27th. And we have I think last week we said we were going to talk about um, escapism and addiction, but I want to table that conversation for next week because I actually would like to even bring some research papers to the table and talk about what is addiction overall, as opposed to just talk about gaming addiction. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so we had another question that popped up in guild chat, which I thought was extremely interesting. I briefly, I hopped into your stream the other day and we briefly teased this, and then we had a huge discussion over in the adventuring channel for our World of Warcraft Classic Guild. Um, so if you remember from last week, we talked about one of the challenges that I've seen from trying to do a casual raiding guild is we've had the people who really like raiding have just abandoned the guild and said, we're going to go somewhere else and because we want to do it now. We don't want to wait. So Todd's one of our officers in Toddchamar in our guild. He's also one of our Saga of Leucemia backers from a long time ago. So he had a question about guilds, and this is kind of a longer question that has multi parts. So I'm going to read the question, Eloa, and then I'll let you talk about it from your perspective, and then I'll
Mm-hmm.
jump in and kind of give some of my perspective because this does directly relate, ironically, to some of what we talked about last week. So he said, from playing classic World of Warcraft again, and from my memories of games in the past, it seems that people like to be in guilds just for the sake of being in a guild. Tons of guilds are made in Classic, and I think most have the idea that they want to raid together when they get to the end game, but it seems like the vast majority of guilds are just a place for people to hang out and occasionally talk to others. The guilds never seem to get enough people to raid or do groups together, and slowly people stop logging in, making the people who do want to raid move on somewhere else. What do guilds provide in this day and age when people can just pug everything, such as in World of Warcraft retail? And if people can pug most, if not all, of their raiding content, what is the point of a guild? Especially in a game like Classic, where there is zero perks to being in a guild. And before I open up the table for you, I'd like to say that, he talks about perks here. I think as an example, EverQuest 2 is a good example in that guilds have an actual structure. So the guild can level up. The guild has perks like a guild bank. And when you start off,
Mm-hmm.
the guild bank is very small, but the more levels you get, the bigger that guild bank becomes, and the more people you have, there's more perks and faster reputation, and so on and so forth. So yeah, if you can do everything in a pug these days, what is the point of a guild in a modern MMORPG setting if the only thing people are going to do is use it as a place to socialize? Because back in the day, guilds used to be about, hey, we're going to get in a guild to do content together. And these days, it seems like that's a challenge for many people because they'd prefer to just pug it. Go.
Well, it is clear that guilds have changed over the years. So when I started playing MMORPG, a guild was the only social structure that you will have that is organized by the game, but that people are using that in forums, and that was it. Nowadays, first of all, we have ways and means to create communities far beyond what's happening in game. In general, people are having their Discord server, their they are hanging out on Twitch or YouTube or social media, Facebook page and whatnot. You have many different ways of gathering, and people from different places, maybe from different games, from different servers. It all depends how you gather people. So, in addition, what I find very interesting is a lot of games have a lot more flexibility to their players, understanding that maybe sometimes you want to be in the guild with your five best friend, but also you have ambition and maybe you want to succeed at red, and so you want to have a guild that aim to do raiding and stuff like that. That's why you have Guild Wars 2 or Elder Scrolls Online that allow people to have up to 5 guilds. Other games do it differently, like Final Fantasy. They organize. You have the guild itself, which is called a free company there, and then you have chats, which are just social gatherings. So you can invite people. It's like a guild, but it just serves as a chat. And World of Warcraft now allow the same things to create a community. Either you create a Battle.net community or you create a community within World of Warcraft. Then you can invite people from different server, and that can belong to a guild already. So I think that now it's very important to be as flexible as possible, because people want to gather with friends for different reasons, and therefore to allow to have chats or different guilds or whatever. I think it's the smart way to do now. It's very difficult to get involved with just one group of people.
Um, so my take on this, and we had this, this is kind of a rehashing of the discussion that we had in that Discord channel here for the listeners of this podcast and the viewers of this show. Um, I'm the type of person who I'm not going to join a guild unless I know that I'm going to be making a commitment to those people. As a general rule, because I have the Saga of Lucemia gaming community, that's my guild, and we do different games together. But even before that, um, I've never joined a guild and left the guild in less than like several years. And this goes back ways because I ran my own guild for about 7 years. But even before that, in the early days of my uh, EverQuesting, I might have only ever been in the first guild I was ever in was called Champions of the Light, and I was there for about 2 years. And then I went into another raid guild for about 2 years, and then that guild kind of splintered into three different guilds, and I stuck with the one group. So there was three, and then we formed our EQ2 guild, which merged with another guild. So that would have been like five, and then from there I formed my own, which was the sixth. And the Saga of Lucemia community is the seventh. So in 20 years of gaming, I've only ever been involved with seven guilds, and the vast majority of that time has been spent in either my own guild, which at the time we called it Stormhaven, and then Haven, Stormhaven, and then Haven throughout EQ2, Vanguard, and Lord of the Rings Online and stuff. And then with the Saga of Lucemia gaming community, in between those two, I've got about 12 years somewhere. So out of those 20 years, 12 of those are with two guilds, two gaming communities. So back in the day, when we talk about how people used to socialize a long time ago before Discord and social media and all this other stuff, um, especially at the at the high end, there used to be an application process to join a guild. Not only did they need to see that you had all the proper gear and that you played the right time slots and that you were going to be able to, fit the DPS role or the healer role that the guild needed you to fill in the raid slots. They also, the good guilds, you had to fill out an application and you had to provide them with points of contact from your previous guild. And one of the big flags for us back in the day was if someone was applying to our guild, I needed to see that they had not been guild hopping. If they had been in more than two guilds in a 3 year period of time, I just wouldn't accept their application, period. Because I could already see a habit. The habit is this person is only going to be here for a year, year and a half, and then they're going to move on somewhere else. So I want to see someone who's been in a guild for 4 years, like minimum of 3 to 4 years, and that way I know that that person, if they're able to make a connection with the people in the guild, they're going to stick around for that connection. And today's people, most people don't game like that. Most people are like you just said. They want to have their 5 guilds and they want to hop around and they want to have their 3 friends that they group with over here and their 7 friends that they group with over here and the crafting people. And I'm not one of those people. I don't like to be in lots of different guilds and groups. When I pick a community, I'm making a statement. And that statement is this is my family. I'm going to get to know these people on a first name basis, and I am going to commit to these people. And this, so there's the social aspect of guilds to me. And the second, and this is for me the most important, is that once I have made the commitment to that group of people, then I am there for the benefit of the group. So I'm not there to worry about what's best for me. I'm there to worry about what's best for the guild. So whatever the guild's objectives are, that's my objective. And unfortunately, not everyone shares that same mentality. And some of this has to deal with the way that games have been programmed over the past 10 years, where we have introduced all of these features like matchmaking and pickup raid functionality in games like World of Warcraft Classic. We have eliminated the need to create relationships with people. I don't need to know you. I don't need to talk to you. I don't need to learn how to play with you because guess what? I can turn the difficulty of the game down to the minimum and we can do the content with anybody. And therefore we can pug everything. And so there's no need to have that social cohesion that you used to need if you wanted to complete the end game. So I think what Todd is seeing from his perspective, because I know we've struggled with this within our guild in World of Warcraft Classic, in that we have a very good core group of people who are there for the benefit of everyone. And we've got. I'll point out in particular. Todd's one of those people, but also we have Stressa and his wife Knight. Um, Off the top of my head, we've got Adric, who's a long-term. Adric's another one of our long-term Saga Bluestemia community members. Um, those are some individuals right off the top of my head who they will drop everything they're doing to help someone out, and they will constantly. That's their whole purpose. That's the reason they log in every day, is because they want to help other people in the guild achieve their objectives, so that we all get to see the content that we want to see, and so that we can all achieve our goal as a unit, which is to get to the end. By the way, last night, or it was actually this morning, I am now at the last step of the Onyxia attunement, so we got to go kill the general in Upper Blackrock Spire, and that's something that we've been doing as a guild. Is everybody's been getting their quests up to that point, and we've been doing it together on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturday nights, and Fridays more recently. So, I see that from a core group of people, but then we've also had people who joined World of Warcraft Classic with us, and then because we weren't leveling fast enough, they were gone within the first few weeks of the game because they didn't care about the guild. They didn't care about anybody there. They cared about what's best for them. So it's what's best for me. I want to be leveling. I want to be raiding. You guys are going to hold me back. So, screw you. I'm out. And, obviously that's no offense to them. That's their play style. But I also think that that's partly just the way games have been designed over the last 10 years. People have been trained to play like that. Whereas opposed to when you and I grew up gaming, we didn't have all these pug features that allowed us to do that. So we had to make relationships and we had to, become friends with these people if we wanted to ever have a chance of doing the high-end dungeons, because otherwise you would log into the game and you'd sit there for an hour looking for group because no one wanted to group with you or you didn't have friends, and that sucked. I was never one of those people, but I don't know if you have stories about that, but I know I've heard from lots of people over the years who have horror stories of logging into a game and spending an hour and a half looking for a group and then getting discouraged and quitting the game because they could never find people to group with. um, I've never had that issue, but I've also always made the effort to make friends with people. I was also one of those weirdos back in like 1999, 2000 who would put my picture on forums because there would always be a section of the forums where like, who are you in real life? And I was never afraid to do that. So this was, I think that's why I naturally got into social media and public speaking because I was never afraid to put a name to the face or a face to the name, so to speak. So I don't know. I think that what Todd is describing and what you were just describing is just a natural evolution of the modern generation of MMORPGs, and it remains to be seen um, what's going to happen in a game like ours, where we're taking a step back and we're not providing players with those um, looking for group features or those matchmaking features. You're muted, by the way.
Oh yeah, this is true. I forgot that I had the push to talk, so I could not interrupt you. Well, maybe that's good. Um, yeah, the looking for group and dungeon finder things. This is something we have already talked, which is a different type of problematic, I think, related to that subject. I think the reason why there is no need of guilds in the same way that you needed guilds 15 years ago, it's because the game does not really require you to have a guild, not because you can pug and stuff, but because you do not have an incentive, a proper incentive to do a guild as a guild. In most game, it has become so flexible, which I am grateful for. By the way, I think this is a good feature. Everything that can allow you to make friends with people more easily is better, and to have several group of friends is better than to have only one group of friends. It's always good. In any case, because everything is so flexible and you do not need to have a guild to succeed in a raid. What you need is to have a community that work. It doesn't need to be a guild as a guild. It doesn't care if you
These
have the,
days.
yeah, those days, because you can very often you have a mega server, because you get to know people maybe in a Discord group or maybe in the Twitch chat of someone or on a Facebook page. And so you're maybe not a guild, you come from different server, you have your own guilds too, but you still can gather, do your things, organize yourself, make your red. And the guild structure does not offer that many advantages. And all of this will depend on the game. In some game it's a little bit more important to be part of a guild. And in some games just give you an access to a guild bank or something like that, some feature that you have in game. But it's, I believe that the interest of having a guild depend first of the type of game and what the guild represent in that game. Second, the type of content you want to do and the kind of organization you want.
Yeah, I
Because
think, yeah, that's a good point. Like, if your guild is only going to be about just, 6-man dungeons and roleplay events and hanging out and being chill and relaxed, the guild is at that point just a chat room. It's nothing more than that. It's just a socialization hub. Um, Whereas if you're actually wanting, and this is the key. So let me ask you this, because we've briefly talked about this, I think, in previous episodes. Um, in World of Warcraft retail, you have that looking for group feature or that looking for raid feature, which, if I'm not mistaken, that is the raid on the absolute easiest minimum level, correct?
yeah, yeah.
But if you want to complete, what's the maximum, like mythical or something?
Yes, it's mythical, and there you need a guild.
Yes.
Because you can only do Mythic Plus, the Mythic Red on your own server. So you cannot invite people that are not from a different server to your group. So generally, you will want a guild. That's what will happen, because the guild is localized still on the server itself.
Okay, so
While the
that's interesting to know. Because I've not played retail, so I don't understand how it works.
Mhm.
So it sounds to me like they've taken that into consideration. Blizzard has, and they've said, okay, look, for the ultimate casual player, we'll make it cross server. Everyone can do it. Get rid of the difficulty so that anyone can complete the story and at least say they've done it. But then if you want to do it at the difficulty that we've actually designed it for, then here's the mythical, which requires you to only be on your server. You have to have a community. You have to have a guild. Okay, so that makes a little sense. I do
Yeah,
have a question for you at this point, which is, you know, what do you think are some good ways to incentivize people to? I mean, what would be good ways to incentivize people joining a guild? Like reasons to join a guild beyond, and I'm talking beyond social
yeah.
or beyond
I'm going.
even
I'm
the
going to tell
content
you a lot of
aspect.
example. But first of all, I want to underline that what I think it's very good that the game is doing is to allow you to have a guild for different game perks, we will say, but also having your own custom channel, so you do not need to do the sacrifice. Do I want to go in my guild of real life friends, which are noobs who cannot play, or do I want to go with my rating top gaming pro you know it's nice when you can keep a social interaction with people in the game, while still having your own guild, so you don't have to make a choice, because that was a problem before. uh, and I think so, to allow more flexibility is always good. But otherwise, what in a game could incentivize people to do a guild? For instance, if you have leaderboards where your guild name will be, that's something that Elder Scrolls Online is doing. You have a leaderboard where guilds can compete with each other to finish certain trials, certain raids in the least time possible. So you have a sort of competition, and
Are there
the
any
guild
bonuses from that? Like what do you
yes,
get?
I think you gain money or stuff like that. I think there is something. In addition, you of course have guild banks, the tabard with the color of the guild and that kind of things.
So I'm gonna jump in real quick because what you just said about the leaderboards, I have a mobile game on my phone. It's a pool game. Um, I can't remember who put it out. It's Tencent owns the company. I think it's Miniclip is the company actually that develops it. But it's pool. It's 8 ball pool, and that's one of the things I've seen in that mobile game. Not just that mobile game, but all the mobile games is that leaderboard system whereby by your guild or your group being in these positions, you get coin or currency that you can spend in the in-game store. That's something that I've seen, but I think that only really applies to games where there's a free-to-play element. Um, the
No, here the leaderboards, the interest is not so much linked to a cash shop or whatever. It's bragging rights. It's about the fame. We are better than those guys. I think that's the most interesting part of a leaderboard, if you're in that mindset of competing in
did
games.
did World of Warcraft ever do? Was one of the things I loved about EverQuest 2 and Vanguard was that when your guild got a world first or a server first, it was a it was a server wide announcement
Yeah, of
that
course.
that
In World of
either your
Warcraft, you have that.
character it did okay because that was the thing I remember because in EverQuest 2 and Vanguard, I could even go back. We did this a few months ago. We were going back into Vanguard and I was showing my brother or somebody like there's still records of like our guild and my character like getting all these world firsts in Vanguard. They're still out there, and EverQuest 2, probably. I mean, I'd have to go back and dig up. But that was one of the things that I was always fun in game for us as a guild was getting our name plastered across the server every night that we played because we were out there doing the content ahead of everybody else. And we didn't necessarily need a leaderboard for that. We just had the perk of being able to take screenshots and
Yeah,
have it on our forums.
but that was just one of the ideas that I was explaining you for incentivizing people to be part of a guild. But Guild Wars 2 has other things, which I find very interesting. Guild Wars 2 has activities specifically made for guilds, which are like races or a little contest, mini game they have to do. And it's required to be in a group, but it's more for fancy than something really difficult. It's not a raid or a boss to kill. It's more mini games that you can do with your
Okay.
guild. And I think it was a very great idea. I don't
That's
believe
sounds
they
like a
have
more
developed that.
it sounds like a more casual feature because I know in EverQuest 2 one of the fun things about EverQuest 2 was they had um, at least at launch it wasn't a big thing later on but at least in the launch game you had obviously your guild could get levels and there was perks with leveling your guild like more bank storage and everything else. And by the way, we're definitely modeling our guild system in Saga Lucimia after EverQuest 2 primarily. There was the guilds, they were called city raids. So you could go into your faction's headquarters and you could go to the like guy who the city registrar, where you get your guild name and everything else. And they would have these raids to choose from, and they actually had progression. So you had to start off at tier one to get to tier two, to get to tier three, to get to tier four, and you got um, your guild got levels from that. You obviously got gear from that, and you also got tokens that you could use for special in-game stores. So, places that you could get high-end gear, special titles, special things off these merchants that only accepted the tokens that you could only earn if you were doing the raids. So I thought that was always a very fun aspect. And it sounds like Guild Wars 2 has kind of done a little bit of that, but you said they haven't fleshed it out completely? You're muted again.
They are not adding to it.
Okay.
I don't think so, but they started along the release date a little bit later. But that was at the very beginning of Guild Wars 2. They had added this guild system where you could do whole kind of mini games, and I think it's nice to add things like that that will give to people a feeling of belonging. I think a guild is before everything. It's that. And it need to incentivize that. Maybe because you are doing the hardest content in the game and your guild is well structured, disciplined, and work like a little army. Or maybe because it's just friend and you like to help each other, have fun with each other, and just make jokes and whatnot. Or because you like to role play and you have an amazing background and a lot of mysteries and events that are organized every week. There's many difference to want to be part of a guild, but I think the first thing is to have a feeling of belonging. Create your little clan, your little tribe in the game, something like that.
What has been your favorite guild experience or a memory that stands out to you as a like the a prime example of why you would want to join a guild?
I had so many experience all along the years, and there's many answer to that question. I have very fond memory of my guild when I organized a raiding in Wrath of the Lich King, and I did that again in Battle for Azeroth with different people. This is one of my very good memory because we were doing all those red and the teamwork was nice and it created bonds between people, very very strong bonds.
Do you
But
still
there,
keep it? Go ahead, sorry.
I had another example of guild that worked in a very different way, where it was role playing, or maybe it was just being a social guild, a social group of people that gathering and just sharing something together. Yeah,
I
that's
think
it.
my first guild, and this is a two-parter. Um, I think it was called Champions of Light, which I mentioned earlier. It was in EverQuest 1 on the Moral Fool server. Um, that was a role play guild where we were like the champions of light. And so I remember for like the first year I was playing, it was never about, we didn't worry about the raids or anything like that. We were just questing and having fun. And then we had this like role play alliance where, you know, there was us, there was another one I think called the Hessians, which were like a mercenary group. And then there was I can't remember the name of the night elf. There was another one that was like a night elf group, and they were like our bad guys, But in real life, we were all, friends with them and chatting with them. But we would set up these events where they would be playing the bad guys, and we would be playing the good guys, and we would have these role play events. And then eventually, we all got to the point where we were wanting to do, the end game content. So that's when we formed our raid alliance. And then there was, like I think 8 or 9 guilds that became a part of that, and we all started raiding together um, over the course of up into and through Velius. Um, and I actually have this is the second part of that. I actually to this day have two friends, husband and wife, who I met in that guild. I was actually the one who recruited them, and they happen to live in Colorado at the same time that I was living there, and they were about an hour and a half south of me by car. And once we found out that we lived in the same area, we started meeting up every Tuesday. Every Tuesday, we would all go out and get pizza and beers at this place called McGrath's in Loveland, Colorado, where we would go and just go have beers and pizza and fries and hang out. And I helped them move, and and to this day, um, I have them both on Facebook, and I've stayed in touch with them. We haven't gamed together for it's been a long time. I don't think I've gamed with them since I quit playing EverQuest 1, honestly. So 2000 when did EverQuest 2 come out? Like EverQuest 2 2004? Because when Warcraft came out in 2004, right? I think.
Yeah, and
Yes.
end of 2004.
So it would have been 2004 was the last time I gamed with them, but I've still it's been 15 years and I've 15 16 years and I've stayed in touch with those people um, because of that guild, which was a role play slash social guild. It was not a progression guild. And then the guilds that led up to the point where I started my own guild, I don't remember any of those people. But I do. If you may have seen some of these people, you might not know who they are, or might not remember them. But in our existing early access community for Saga Leucemia, um, Ravon, who we haven't seen, he comes in once a year or so, but he's been here since the beginning. He was actually one of my officers in Vanguard, and there's another woman. Her character's name's Claire. She was one of the officers in my Vanguard guild. She's also in our early access community. So there's a handful of people who I've known and who have stuck around with me since the Vanguard days, all the way through. We've played EverQuest 2 together. We played Lord of the Rings Online together. A bunch of other games. And then now we've had this Saga Lucimi gaming community for the past, I think, 5 years. And the core of that is a social structure where we just like to have fun and play games together. And we do have a focus on the old school as opposed to new. Like we're not playing Final Fantasy 14 together. We're not playing ESO together. We're definitely sticking to the older types of games and the older type of content because even though our core is a social construct, we're very much all into the progression side of gaming and doing things that require a well knit group to complete. Um, I think maybe I've mentioned this in a previous session we recorded, but I think the one thing that's really nice about grouping with the same people over and over and over as opposed to a pickup group is everybody knows how to play within that structure. So I don't have
Hmm.
to worry about like if I'm the tank, then everybody knows how I'm going to tank. Whereas opposed to if it's a pickup group, they don't know my way of tanking, and everybody's got in their mind what is the best way to tank. And you'll often have things like where the ranger decides that he wants to start pulling because you're not pulling fast enough. Well, that's not your job. Your job is not to pull. My job is to pull. I'm the tank. And it was different in EverQuest 1 where you had a dedicated puller, which was usually the monk or the ranger. Um, but in a pickup setting, people don't always mesh well because not everyone is at the same skill level and they've also not played with each other. And the other big factor is they're not in voice chat with each other. And that's a huge bonus is that voice chat communication. Guild Wars 2 does Guild Wars 2 have in-game voice built in or not?
No,
Just Warcraft, right?
they tried.
Guild Wars 2 tried or Warcraft tried?
No, Warcraft tried.
I
Or,
don't think
well,
anybody
it's.
uses it.
No, no one uses it.
No. EverQuest 2 had it, and we all used it. We didn't have a Ventrilo server or anything. We always used the in-game EverQuest 2 guild raid chat and guild chat, and it worked great. All the voice chat worked great. Lord of the Rings has it as well, but it just didn't. It never worked that well, so we always just used something else. And of course, Discord now, like we've had people ask us, which goes back to the social construct. People have asked us if we're going to have a built-in voice chat system for Saga, and the answer to that is no. Why would we? Discord is such an amazing tool. It's free, it's open source, and you can overlay it on top of your game so you can
Hmm.
clearly see who's in your channels and everything else. So there's no need for us to even why waste engineering time to make something like that. But just on that topic, I think that that's something that was cool about that certain genre of games, where like EverQuest 2, Warcraft, Lord of the Rings Online, kind of all those games tried to have some sort of in-game voice chat to help facilitate communication and
Mm,
socialization with the guilds. But for some reason or another, they didn't all have success.
well, the Warcraft one was not working very well when it released.
Yeah, fidelity was bad, I guess.
Yeah,
Okay.
the sound was not really good.
Yeah, um, I think that's something that's been a huge benefit to guilds and modernization is voice chat, because I can remember trying to communicate in not even in raid scenarios, but just dungeon scenarios where somebody had a bad pull, and or you're in a group situation and you're facing that direction, everybody else is facing, and you see that there's two ads coming, and you're having to try to type while at the same time like do DPS and all this other stuff, and you're trying to type, hey, watch out for the ads coming from the other direction. Like, it's so much easier to be able to be on voice chat and just be like, hey guys, two ads coming, and boom, your crowd control person turns around and takes care of it. Um, that became really hectic in raid scenarios with all the text that you had to do and all the typing, and I'm imagining that it was like this with World of Warcraft Vanilla, because the paladin buffs only last for 5 minutes. So like constantly having to hit something in
Well,
chat.
you had your dedicated chat. You had the priest chat, the paladin chat,
Well, I remember
the tank chat.
In EverQuest 1, I had macros set up for everything. So it was like, yeah, I had a macro set up that would like, hit point buff gone, please replace, please refresh or something like that. And then you would set it up to send a tell to that person. So the moment that your hit point buff dropped, you would send a tell to your cleric and be like, need a
Hmm.
refresh. Or if your mana regen buff went down, straight to the enchanter, need a refresh. Um, it's a lot easier because, you know, I don't use any add-ons. And I'm assuming that there are add-ons with World of Warcraft Classic that allow you to see timers on buffs. I don't
Maybe, I
know.
don't know. I'm not a add-on specialist. I usually avoid that. Like
I don't use
three.
any. So I know that I can't see the time on other people's buffs. So I have to pay attention to mine. So it's like if I'm the healer, I buff myself and then
Mm.
I buff everybody else. And then whenever mine runs out, I know it's time for other people. Um, Social constructs within guilds, something that I've given a lot of thought about. Have any games done this that you know of? Because it's been in my mind about. I think every game has done like, extra guild storage space.
Oh, you
Um,
you have different things. You have generally the stuff you receive as a guild is a guild bank. Sometimes you have a guild hub, like a sort of home. You have that, for instance, in Guild Wars 2, and you had that in Wildstar as well, I think. In ESO, you can set it up if you want. You don't have that in World of Warcraft, of course. But there's all kind of benefit. World of Warcraft at some point a talent tree for the guilds. They remove it, but they still let you, or they remove it entirely now. They have done several changes along the years. So,
how
but
did
at
that
some
work?
point, well, of course, it was not really a good idea when you think of it. So basically, you were going in a guild, you create a guild. The guild is fresh, and then the guild need to level. Guild level because all the players will give their experience or a part of their experience to the guild. But while they're leveling up, the guild is leveling up too. So more you have people, faster your guild is leveling up. And then you have a perk to unlock, which add, for instance, instant mail between guild mates, or extra slot in the guild bank, or mounts that everyone can purchase in the guild store. Little stuff like that. But some were quite interesting, like you have more experience or more gold gain, some stuff like this. Therefore, what you had, this was a social problem that came from the system, which was a good idea in a way. Well, of course, you had the social abuse, which is you gather random people to fill up your guild, you level it as fast, and you kick everyone, you have your guild level up, then you can sell it to someone else and do this kind of things. They, you see, you will always have little cunning person to take advantage of a system that
Hmm.
were made for fun.
Well, it just because in the back of my mind, I've given thought to, looking how alternate advancement points worked in EverQuest 1, and I thought it would be cool. So I didn't realize that World of Warcraft had done something like that, but I was thinking, it would be interesting to have a guild where, you could level up the guild and get perks like everybody, at tier 1, everyone gets a 1% speed bonus to their run speed, and then at like tier 5, everyone gets a 15% bonus to their run speed. But the tricky part to that is, what do you do in that scenario where, you get a bunch of random people, you level up the guild, you kick everybody out, and then you sell the guild. How do you want to put preventative measures in place to avoid that from happening? Um, I don't know
Yeah,
how,
but
that's a programming
how can you
issue.
do it?
Well,
It's not so much. It's not a programming issue. This is a social issue. This is
no,
human
it's actually
behavior.
it is a programming issue too, because you do want, from a behavioral, there's two sides to that coin. So there is the social aspect. You want to try to have people not doing that, but sometimes people are going to do it no matter how good you want them to be. So you have to program in restrictions to not let them do this. So here's a good example, because we've talked about this, um, from a programming perspective. One of the things we've always hated, is that if you so I'm thinking of a free to play game, and then they have an optional subscription, or and when you're paying for that optional subscription, I'm going to use Star Wars: The Old Republic as an example. So when I pay to play the game, I have unlimited character slots, and I can make as many characters as I want. But the moment that I go free to play, I have to pick. I think it's 1 to 3. It might be 3. You have to pick like 3 characters. EverQuest 2 does this as well now. You have to pick the characters that you're going to play. So if you previously had 20 characters, and then you decide you don't want to pay for that subscription anymore, suddenly you don't have access to any of those characters anymore, and you have to pick the ones that you're going to play on the free version. That's a very benign, simple example of, I give something to someone, and then the moment that they stop playing, I take it away. And that, from a player standpoint, is very frustrating,
Mhm.
because I've given someone something and I've taken it away. Now, in the case of a character slot, again, very benign, very generic. What do you do in a situation where, for example, um, we've looked at ESO a lot because of the crafting bag, and we've said that kind of, I mean, it's a brilliant idea, but at the same time, from a player perspective, it sucks to have access to it and then you stop playing, and but you have to take it away. You can't, that's one of those cool perks where, from a programming standpoint, they couldn't allow you to keep using that once you stopped playing, because that was the whole reason of having that perk in there in the first place. So you have to put a programming block on it so that people don't abuse that system. But you have to be very careful with that, because the other flip side is, what happens if you design, here's another example. Let's say that you make cloaks. All cloaks in the game can only be purchased from your coin store if you're running an active subscription. So think character slot here for a minute. So I'm paying an active subscription, and I can go to the coin store, and I can buy a cloak, and I can put it on my character. But the minute that I stop paying my subscription, suddenly I no longer have access to that cloak. I bought it, I paid for it, but now you're telling me
It,
I can't use it? Like, that's one of those, you have to be careful about those types of issues.
yeah, I agree.
Sorry,
But
got sidetracked. Well, I mean,
no, but it's
I'm thinking guild perks. There's an interesting. in my mind, I love the idea of having guild perks, of saying, hey, your guild can have 10% run speed if you level your guild to level 60 and you maintain 30 people in the guild and all this other stuff. But there would have to be restrictions in it, like the moment that you have less than 30 people, like you lose those perks or something.
Yeah, and the thing is that one of my I've been thinking a lot about this kind of things, and I believe that I prefer to not have guild perk, which has a in-game bonus, so the guild can really focus of being the social community they want to be. Maybe rating social, small, big. Once you include in-game bonuses that will help you to fight or move or explore whatever, it will give the people a feeling of obligation.
I'm not the
I'm
only
really
one.
sorry for
Yeah,
that.
I'm not the only one with a cough.
No, I'm sorry. So the incentive need to stay social, feeling of belonging, to have like your colors or your flag or your tabard, something that can make things easier to group, like a guild bank, like it's stuff that you can put in common. Maybe build a house if the game allowed to do something like this, and to be able to really build up your guild hall, have fame and fortune and a sense of belonging.
Yeah, guild halls. That was the other thing that EverQuest 2 had was. Now it's my turn. Um, the guild hall system, which you could only have if you were a guild, and then 1 second. The more
Yep,
status points. Yeah,
it's a
well,
winter.
yeah, that's the winter thing. The more status points you had, the bigger guild hall that you could buy, and the bigger guild halls had more. You could put more decorations in them, and there was more rooms and more space, and they were cooler. And same thing with Lord of the Rings Online. Like, um, the unfortunate reality of Lord of the Rings Online is they've tied so much of that to the cash stop. As much as I love that game, you pretty much cannot get a guild house in EverQuest 2, like the top end ones, unless you're willing to spend real life money, not on your
Hmm.
monthly subscription, but to buy extra coins
Yeah.
because they've made the cost so expensive. I forget. It's been a couple of years since we looked at it because we were thinking about like one of the ones over by Minas Tirith, and we looked at it and it was like you're required to have these mithril coins, and the only way to earn mithril coins is you can like convert some things, but you have to get them from special quests. So there's only a limited amount of ways to earn them in game, and so and you can't trade them, or at least at the time you couldn't. So whoever was the guild leader had to be the one with enough coins to be able to buy the guild hall. And
Mm.
since there was only a limited amount that you could earn in game that way, it became this scenario where you needed to purchase like, several hundred coins off of the store. And when you did the math, it was like, $300 or something to spend on the in-game store to get that cool guild hall. And it's like, I don't, at that point, it's not a social construct at all. It's a way for the company to
Yeah.
make money, which I think is kind of
Yeah.
shitty.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you're going
I
to have a
agree.
guild halls, they should be something that the guild members can earn together.
Yeah, and that's the point of it too. It's that you build it together. That your effort as a guild, as a group, is rewarded. Whatever you're doing, if you're purchasing and being an economic guild, or you farm it yourself, or you have, whatever is, doesn't matter how you do, but the goal is to show off your efforts, the things you have accomplished together, how you're organizing yourself, and that's what incentivize the group play, because you don't only are gathering in a guild because you want the red to be cleared, but also because you have all those cool stuff that you can do on the side.
Yeah. Um, I still think that the best system I've seen over the years has been EverQuest 2's, which is why we've looked so heavily at them. Um, but I did not know, and now I'm going to go research World of Warcraft and see what kind of perks they had when they were doing their guild perks. Um,
There's also in Cataclysm.
okay, well, I'll take a look at that and see what they had. Because I did love, the housing options for EverQuest 2 are really cool. I always liked the city raids. Um, I don't know. We still have a long way to go before we are ready to start, implementing those features in our game, and we haven't even finished fleshing out the design yet for guilds. But I think that I think I think we both kind of agree that at its core, any guild can function as a social construct. That's really what they're there for. But I think that it's a good design decision to have perks.
Yes,
Otherwise, like you're
bec-
saying, like Todd's saying, there's no reason for you to join a guild if it's just a place to chat with people because you
no,
could,
nowadays you have other means to
yeah,
create a
there's
community and
social
to gather
media,
with people.
Discord. We even,
So
sorry, go ahead.
yeah, the guild is only interesting if there's something, a reason to be in a guild in game, and to just be a group of people that play together. You don't need the guild for that anymore because people are socializing outside of the game most of the
Yeah,
time
I can
through
have 10
Discord
people on
or
Discord.
Facebook or whatever.
Yeah, we don't have to be in a guild together to be in Discord. And, my brother and I are a good example of that. We'll go off and play with a couple of his friends. We played Star Wars The Old Republic for a long time. We didn't need a guild. We just met up on Ventrilo and met up like twice a week and went and played. You didn't need to have a guild for that. So yeah, there's a lot of things to look at when we're designing things. Um, I think we're going to wrap up a little bit early. We're about 50 minutes in, which means we're about 10 minutes short of how we usually go. But I think both of us are feeling under the weather, um, and I need to blow my nose like really bad. So we're gonna like wrap this up so I can go take care of my cold. But I
So
would, obviously, excuse me, love to hear from everybody. What do you guys think about guilds? Why do you join guilds? What is to you a good reason to join a guild? And then from a structure standpoint, I'd love to hear ideas from people on things that they've seen or ideas that they have about what are some really cool guild perks or things that you could have to incentivize people to want to join a guild above and beyond just completing content together. Because obviously it depends on the game, but we've seen that in some games like World of Warcraft retail, you can do the content with looking for raid. You don't even need to have a guild, as opposed to other games that might be more hardcore or old school like ours, where you're probably going to need to join a guild if you want to do raid content. But I'd love to hear about perks and stuff, so feel free to let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for your support. You can also get the podcast version over at Patreon, and you can find all of the links to Eloa's channels in the description below. I
thank
think that's
you.
all. Any final words on your end?
Well, guys, have a very good week. Enjoy
Yes.
yourself, have fun, and spread the word about this little series
Yes, it's
around
been
you.
growing slowly but surely. Like
Share
I think
it with your friends.
when we started, we only had like 60 followers on YouTube, and now we've got like 82 or something. So I mean, it is growing slowly
Cool.
but surely. Got a few supporters over at Patreon as well, so thanks to you guys who are supporting. And we will see you in next week's episode, which we will dive into a much deeper topic.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's
Very
going to be
interesting.
interesting. So we'll talk about addiction and escapism next
Escapees.
week. All right, thanks everyone.
Bye, guys.